Hello and welcome back to This Film is Lit. This is the prequel to the 12th episode. On today's episode, we're going to be discussing the best of 2017. We got a top 5 list. Katie's got her top 5 books that she read. I have the top 5 movies that we saw. And we're going to talk about that for a little bit. Then we're going to break down go behind the scenes of our next film/book, which is Fight Club. So we're going to be doing that in the second half of the episode. But first, let's get right into it. This is our best of 2017. I have some honorable mentions for the movie, so if you have any honorable mentions for your books, if not, then we can just start at number 5.
I'm just going to start at number 5.
Okay, well, let me do my honorable mentions for the movie real quick.
Okay.
These didn't make my top 5 list, but they were close.
Okay.
And those two, I have 2. I'm sure there are others, but the 2 that I have didn't make the list. Logan, which was really, really good.
Yes, it was.
Didn't make the list, but almost. It was right on the edge. And my hot take of 2017, apparently, The Last Jedi. Boy,
how dare you like The Last Jedi? How dare you?
I have been waging war on the internet with idiots since I saw that movie. It's fine if you don't like it, or if there's things you didn't like, or if you didn't like it, totally cool. But holy cow, the reasons some people hate that movie and don't like are some of the dumbest reasons. I've argued with so many people on Reddit in the last month. Anyway, so The Last Jedi did not quite make the list, although I really liked it. There were
a lot of good movies.
There were a whole lot of really good movies. So, but I wanted to give The Last Jedi just because I want to get people yelling at me again because they didn't understand the movie.
Well,
but
what would you do without people on the internet yelling at you, babe?
Yeah. Well, they weren't yelling at me. They were yelling about the movie, and I came in and I was like, actually, it seems like you didn't even watch the fucking movie. That was so many of the things. Like, did you even watch? Anyways, we don't need to get into it right now. So, those are my 2 honorable mentions. Let's start at number 5, though. Katie, what's your number 5 book?
So my number 5 book, I'm actually going to give a shout out to a friend and a colleague of mine. Daniel Crocker wrote a volume of poetry called Shithouse Rat.
Fun title.
It's really good.
Yeah.
His stuff it's like really adult, irreverent takes on pop culture.
Yeah.
So a lot of Shithouse Rat is Sesame Street characters having conversations with each other. It doesn't necessarily sound funny.
No, I can see how
but
you
it is.
Yeah.
It's funny, and it's witty, and it's very deep. It addresses a lot of really important issues.
Cool. Interesting. Yeah, no, that sounds neat. Yeah. And plus, that's neat.
Yeah.
There you go. All right. My number 5 movie of the year, Thor Ragnarok, was my number 5.
Thor Ragnarok
made
was
the
really
list
good.
for me. And now I got to preface this list by saying these are the movies that I saw. There are literally a dozen movies that I didn't get a chance to see that I'm sure would be on my top. Shape of Water, The Big Sick, Get Out.
Yeah.
There's this handful of movies that I just didn't see for whatever reason that are on a list that I'm going to see. So these are just the ones I have seen. Thor Ragnarok was number 5. I thought it was a lot of fun. Best Thor movie by far. Really, I like Taika Waititi. Jesus. The guy that directed it, who did What We Do in the Shadows, they're doing a sequel. Did you hear this?
Really?
They're doing a werewolf sequel. It's not really a sequel, but the same people, same writer, same director. They're doing a werewolf version. It's called I can't remember for the life of me, but they're doing a werewolf mockumentary in the same style as What We Do in the Shadows. So
cool.
That should be interesting. Which check out What We Do in the Shadows if you haven't seen it. The guy who directed Thor Ragnarok directed that. Really good.
And it's really funny.
Really funny mockumentary about vampires. Stars a guy from Flight of the Conchords and some other people. Anyways, Thor Ragnarok, I would recommend it. It's really good fun. It's just a fun time. It's a fun movie.
Yeah,
it has fun, but it has good heartfelt moments at the end, or little moments here and there that are... Anyways, and Kate Blanchett?
Yeah.
Looks real good.
Yeah, she was that dark Kate Blanchett.
Katie, what's your number 4 book?
I read a nonfiction book called Bandersnatch. C.S. Lewis, J.R.R. Tolkien, and the creative collaboration of the Inklings by Diana Pavlak
Is that the title?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I thought those people, the way you read that was like, I was like, wait, J.R.R. Tolkien and they collaborated on a... Okay, sorry, continue.
It's about the writing group that they had at Oxford. And what they did there and how they helped each other. Yes, nonfiction. It's kind of almost like a memoir-ish of the group. Although I guess it can't really be a memoir since they didn't write it.
Yeah, well, it's kind of that.
Yeah, kind of that type of
book. Yeah. Huh, interesting. Well, we may have to delve back into that for some knowledge when we get to Lord of the Rings eventually. My number 4 film was Blade Runner 2049. I really enjoyed this movie. Big fan of Blade Runner, the original. Even bigger fan after we watched it again for the podcast. I really enjoyed it. And 2049 was really good. It had a lot of the elements that I liked from Blade Runner, the setting, the how real everything felt, the grittiness of it, sort of the not mystery, but kind of a mystery, the like trying to figure out what's going on in this story without a very restrained storytelling where it makes you as a viewer kind of follow along. It doesn't hand you, you know what I mean? It doesn't just hand you all the answers on a plate, which I enjoy. Visually, one of the most stunning movies of the year, live action at least. And then Ryan Gosling is really good in it. So was Harrison Ford, surprisingly enough, even though I was surprised he even wanted to be there. But he did a really good job. No, I really liked Blade Runner 2049. Very good sequel. Probably one of the better sequels that could come out 30 years after a movie. If you make a sequel, it's about as good as you could do it, I would think. So that's my number 4. Katie, what's your number 3 book?
Number 3 book that I read this year was a middle grade book called Star-Crossed by Barbara D. Middle grade.
Barbara D.
Yes. Middle grade is like a step below young adult.
Oh, okay.
It's like the 4th through maybe 6th or 7th grade.
So would Harry Potter be considered middle grade?
I would potentially consider the first couple Harry Potter books in the middle grade
and then they
range.
age with the student.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, that's fair. They do. So, sorry, what was it about? I don't know if we even got into what it was about.
We did not. So it's about a girl who she was in 8th grade, maybe, who is questioning her sexuality, that maybe she's bisexual. And it's really heartfelt and age appropriate. And, kind of tackled an important topic, but did it in a way that wasn't, it wasn't trite and it wasn't making it into some kind of show. Yeah. And it didn't feel like, how sometimes when you read issue books, they're issue books.
They feel very much like this very special episode.
It was not a very special episode.
Yeah.
It was really a nice book.
Huh. Okay, what was it called again?
Star-Crossed. By Barbara D.
Cool. Check it out. My number 3, Wonder Woman. I really liked Wonder Woman.
I loved Wonder Woman.
You loved Wonder Woman. I thought it was not only a fantastic film, super fun, had a little issue at the end with, the final boss, basically.
Yeah.
But which it could have been a little better. But apart from that, really, really good, really fun, and I think a kind of an important film in terms of, where the world is today and that sort of thing. So I'm super excited for Wonder Woman 2. Wonder Woman was fantastic. If you haven't seen it, go fucking see Wonder Woman. Or rent it. It's not in theaters.
Yeah, rent it at this point.
Yeah. Number 3, Katie. Number 2 book.
So the rest of my list is all books that were published within the last year or two. Okay. This one is not. But this year I read Good Omens by Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett, which I couldn't believe that I had never read it before.
Yeah, I couldn't either.
Because those are 2 of my favorite authors. But I hadn't read it, and I read it this year, and I loved it.
Yeah.
It's about the apocalypse. It's about the coming of the 4 horsemen and Satan, child,
Wow.
Oh, The Antichrist.
Sounds good.
That's it.
Sounds fun.
And it is being made into...
A movie? TV show?
No, it's BBC is doing it, or Amazon maybe. But David Tennant's going to
I did know that. I've seen pictures, actually, of David Tennant in costume with somebody else, but yeah.
So I'm pretty excited about that.
Huh, that's cool.
I think if they manage to capture the tone, it'll be really good.
I'm excited to watch it, because I wonder who's producing it or writing, direct.
I'm not sure.
What the crew is that's working on it. I mean, David Tennant can't go wrong, but I don't know. Interesting. Good omens. All right, number 2 film, probably the movie we saw most recently, Coco. It's my number 2 movie of the year.
Yeah.
I think. No, definitely. Fantastic film. We talked about it on here, so we won't go into too much detail. If you want, you can listen to a review of it about 4 or 5 episodes ago. I think it's the prequel to the Christmas Carol episode, which is like 9. So, Coco, like I said, if you want to hear us talk about it, go check out that first 30 minutes of that episode. Gorgeous, beautiful movie. It might still be in theaters in some places.
Yeah, it might be.
Probably not. It's probably moving out. There's a lot of big movies moving through this time of year. But, yes, Coco is my number 2. Katie, what's your top book that you read in 2017?
Okay, top absolute favorite book that I read in the year 2017 is a young adult novel called The Female of the Species by Mindy McGinnis. And it's about, how do I describe this? It's another kind of a topical issue book. It's kind of sort of about rape culture.
Yeah.
It's about this girl whose older sister was abducted and not so great things happened,
right.
And then she was murdered. Oh. And the guy who did it gets off on a technicality. So her younger sister murders him.
Okay.
And
when you say her younger sister, you mean the main
girl,
character?
Yeah.
Okay.
The main character is the younger sister.
That's what I mean. I was just double checking that you didn't mean... Yeah, sorry. Yes. Okay.
And the book kind of deals with, the aftermath of that.
Yeah.
And what happens to her and what she does as she moves forward. And, it's very visceral.
Yeah.
And it did a really good job of capturing that's kind of ball of anger that sits in you when you've experienced some not so great stuff.
Uh-huh. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it sounds it's
not an easy read.
It sounds intense.
It is not an easy read, but it's really good.
Really good. What was it again?
The Female of the Species by Mindy McGinnis.
All right, Mindy McGinnis. Interesting. So check it out. Number 1 book. My number 1 movie. And this is tough. There's probably movies I enjoyed more than this, but maybe not. Baby Driver is my number 1 movie. I'm a sucker for Edgar Wright and everything he does, but that Baby Driver was such a unique and interesting piece of filmmaking.
Yeah.
That I think on a technical and execution level, it's kind of hard to at least from the movies I saw. Again, I'm sure there's tons of movies I know there's a bunch that are really, really good that we haven't seen. I have a feeling Shape of Water might have been my favorite movie if it had come to our fucking theater, even though they had a fucking poster for it. But yeah, so I'm excited. I want to see it again. We've only seen it the one time. Edgar Wright movies always are better the second time you see them because they're so dense and full of information and little things you didn't catch the first time. So I want to watch it again. But Baby Driver it's fantastic. It's a musical with cars and guns, kind of.
Yeah, it was one of those that I probably wouldn't have gone to see if you hadn't wanted to see it.
Yeah.
But I left the theater genuinely feeling that I had never seen anything like that before.
You'll go to that movie, and now there may be some other things I know he did a music video that this is loosely based on a long time ago, but in terms of feature length movies, there's nothing like this film that I know of, and it's truly an experience when you go see it, and it has its own flaws here and there, but overall and it also has fucking Kevin Spacey in it, which is a whole other bag of worms at this point, but. Ignore that for now. It's a really, really fucking good movie. Baby Driver is my number one. I had a couple books real quick before we move on. I didn't read, I say when you said top 5 list, I'm like, did I read 5 books? I probably did. I probably read 7, 8 books. I read, a book a month or so. I don't read nearly as much as you do.
I read a lot.
Yeah, you read constantly. But I read every night and that sort of thing. One of the ones that I read that you got me for Christmas or my birthday?
I think I got you that for your birthday.
What? Well, yeah, maybe. Was The Last Wish, which is the first novel in the Witcher series.
Yeah.
Which is it was a novel series first, and then they made a very successful video game series, which I have played the third, and you watched me play it, and you were fascinated by it. It's like the only game you've ever really enjoyed watching me play, because it's like watching a show.
It was like watching an interactive movie. Yeah,
it's like watching an interactive movie, and then you kind of tuned out whenever I ran around and fought stuff, and then whenever it got to interesting dialogue moments, you kind of tuned back in. I read that this is the first novel in the series, and it was really interesting. I want to read, I think there's 2 or 3 more. And I want to read them, but it's so perfectly reading it translate. Like, I was like, wow, this reads like, I can see why they we should make a video game of this book, because it reads like when you're playing a video game, the way that the choices the character makes and the way that the scenarios and the journeys he goes on play out is like made to be a video game. And I think they're doing an Amazon series or something.
I heard that, yeah.
Netflix. Somebody's doing a series, which is going to be real interesting. It should be good. It's really cool, fun character.
If they throw enough money at it.
If they have the money for it, it'll be really good. It's a great world. If you don't know anything about The Witcher, if you're not a game player, or you haven't read the novels, it's imagine kind of Game of Thronesy, but more magic.
Yeah.
Like much more magic. And the main character, the Witcher, what Witchers do, they hunt
monsters.
They basically they're go from town to town, and people pay them to kill monsters and demons and that sort of thing. And they can use magic, and there's witches and wizards, and so there's a fair amount of magic, but it's kind of that same, it's set in that medieval style,
faux medieval
folklore kind of thing. But it's really cool, and I'm keep your ear out for the TV show if that ever comes to fruition, because I think it could be really good. The other one, real quick, was a book you got from somewhere. It's called Starflight by something Landers. I don't know. I don't know her first name. It was really interesting. You were just you might like this because you just got it from Goodreads or something. I don't even remember. Where did you?
I saw it recommended somewhere, and the person recommending it said that it reminded them of. I'm
assuming you're going to say Firefly.
Yes, Firefly. Yes,
because that's what it is. If you're a reader and you're looking for something to kind of fill that Firefly void in your life, it's pretty good. It's not the best book in the world. It's a little cliche at times. It's not breaking any molds or.
It is young adult.
It's young adult.
Especially genre young adult tends to be a little bit tropey.
Yeah, it's a little tropey, but it's tropey in a fun way, in a good way. It's a quick read. It's only 300 pages or something. It's about a couple young star-crossed lovers and their travels through space, and they end up on a crew. And they basically become the family. The crew becomes a family. They end up on this ragtag junker. And it's Firefly basically, except with a love story with the 2 main characters built in. It's interesting. It was fun. I had a lot of fun. I don't know if there's a sequel. I think there's another one set in the same universe by her, but it's not about these people. I'll have to look it up. But I was hoping there was a sequel because I thought it was interesting.
I'm sure there will be.
It ends in a way where it could be a sequel. Yeah. So. Or at least more books, not necessarily a sequel. But anyways, Starflight by Melissa Landers. That's it. Starflight by Melissa Landers.
And I think you hit all of the movies that I would put on my list. I would maybe give an honorable mention to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
Did that come out in 2017? Or was that 2016?
Yeah, we saw that this year.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
That was really good.
Yeah. It wasn't perfect, but I appreciated the way that they expanded on the themes of the first movie.
No, I agree. I think it was really good, and I forgot that came out this year. Honestly, I thought that was 2016 for some reason. I think it was really underrated. I think because reviews were good, but not like the first one is everybody's like, wow, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And
well,
it was
the
really
first
good.
one broke the mold a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. And then this one kind of followed it. But yeah, I think it expanded in interesting ways. And it's, if you want to hear a really good analysis of that one, Lindsay Ellis, one of our favorite YouTubers, has a great video on Guardians.
Yes.
Right?
She did, yeah.
On Guardians of the Galaxy 2, which, breaks it down and talks about it really
beautifully.
Beautifully, as all of her videos are. But
she's really smart.
She's real smart. She's real smarty pants. McGee. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about Fight Club. Katie, this is going to be interesting.
Okay.
This is the first David Fincher film we're doing, but it won't be the last. We have another big one.
What else did he do?
We'll talk about it, but he did Gone Girl. So.
That's right, yeah. And we are going to do Gone Girl.
We're going to do Gone Girl, because that's a big one.
Yeah.
Because, spoilers, it was filmed in our town. Go ahead, sorry. Fight Club.
Okay, so first things first, we gotta settle on a pronunciation. I
like Polinick.
So I found a video where he
that.
pronounces it, and he says like Polinick.
Polinick. Yeah, sorry, that's what I meant to say.
I'm just gonna pretend that I'm on a first name basis with him. Call him Chuck.
Chuck. All right, that works. That works for me.
Because I'll pronounce it differently every time.
Polinick.
If I don't. Polinick.
That's easy. I don't know. Yeah, Chuck Polinick. That's his name. He wrote Fight Club. Let's talk about it.
He did. He wrote Fight Club. It was his first published novel.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
It was not the first thing that he wrote. His novel Invisible Monsters.
Okay.
was this first thing that he was trying to shop around, and nobody wanted it because it was too out there.
Yeah.
So he wrote Fight Club, and that got picked up, and he did end up publishing Invisible Monsters later.
Eventually, yeah.
But this was his first published thing. He was allegedly inspired to write it after a camping incident with his friends.
Okay.
He complained to some other nearby campers that they were playing their radio too loudly, and a fight broke out. And so goes the legend. His face was all smashed up, but like when he got back to work after that weekend, none of his coworkers like acknowledged that he looked any different. They just like ignored it. Mm-hmm. So supposedly that's what the novel was inspired by, was that experience.
Potentially apocryphal, but who knows? Apocryphal? Hypocritical? I don't know, whatever the word is.
So this was an interesting novel.
Yeah. It's what you said as you were reading it. You were like, this is crazy.
And I had read something by him before. I read Diary.
Okay.
When I was an undergrad for a class. And I didn't really care for Diary. I liked Fight Club a little more.
Yeah.
And promise I'm not going to get into it.
Yeah. We need to not hit spoilers either.
I know, and I will save it for the actual episode. But I had a hard time finding
much info,
like fun facts about this book.
Not exactly a fun fact book.
No, it's not really. I did find I read a lot of interviews with him, trying to find any like little tidbits.
Yeah.
And I found a quote that I thought was interesting. It's about how he believes it's impossible to write novels that address romance without irony and cynicism. He said, You can't manipulate someone into feeling something in a real obvious way anymore. People are so aware of devices and they resent them. I blame the movies. God, Forrest Gump was one long emotional hand job. Which is the most Chuck Palahniuk thing, I think.
Yeah, it is. Having never read any of his stuff, but I've seen a couple interviews with him, and I've seen Fight Club, and yeah. I mean, I feel like everything Chuck Palahniuk writes is like fucking giant long hand job. But I could be wrong.
It's tropey in a different way.
Not tropey. Sorry, I didn't mean tropey. I meant it's a little self-masturbatory at times. Or at least, again, the movie to me feels
No, you're right.
A little high school edgelordy, like, jerking off to your intellect.
Ooh, we'll talk about it.
I know.
We'll get there.
No, there's lots of there. Like I said, I mentioned it in the last episode. It's a controversial movie, and it's interesting. It's got lots of,
and it's a controversial book too.
Yeah, no, yeah.
So I thought that was an interesting quote. The other thing that I wanted to talk about, since I couldn't find a lot of trivia about the book itself, I went looking for trivia about Chuck. And I found some really disturbing things.
I'm sure.
One of those things where you feel like, this might explain why your writing is so dark.
Yeah.
So first, his paternal grandfather murdered his grandmother and then committed suicide, while his father, who was 3 years old at the time, watched from a hiding place under the bed.
So his dad had some issues, probably. Okay.
So that's fun. His father and his mother fought violently and frequently, apparently, which led to him and his siblings having to live with their maternal grandparents on, like, a ranch somewhere. Also fun. And then, in 1999, incidentally, the same year that Fight Club came out. His father and his father's girlfriend were murdered by her ex-husband.
I read that.
And he set fire to the house to hide the evidence, and they had to be identified by their dental records.
Wait, he?
The murderer.
Oh, okay. I like Chuck Palahniuk. Wait,
no.
Wait, what? Yeah, right. Yeah, I read that. I saw that on something. I can't remember. Somewhere when I was looking around at movie stuff. Yeah. No,
like, that's intense.
It's real intense. He's had some shit happen in his life.
Yeah.
It's funny because in the interviews, he seems very, seems like a very, jovial kind of guy.
He seems
you know what I mean?
pretty well adjusted.
Like, he seems pretty well adjusted.
And I say that it explains why his writing is so dark, but a lot of the stuff that I read with him, too, was kind of talking about how when you put that kind of thing on paper, it doesn't plague you anymore.
Yeah.
So, potentially the reason that he does seem so well adjusted
is because he's exercised
he's exercised it.
Yeah, in his books.
Yes, the demons are in the books.
Yeah, they are. Yes, that's true. There are definitely some demons in some of these books. So, Fight Club the film, boy, there was no shortage of information about this one. So, like I said earlier, directed by David Fincher, most known for probably, he won Oscars or was nominated for Curious Case of Benjamin Button and The Social Network.
Oh, well, we're going to do him multiple times.
Yeah, Social Network.
Both of those are based on books.
And he also directed Seven, which I don't think is a book.
No, I don't think so.
And then Gone Girl, which we'll get to eventually here. He decided to keep, so one of the things I thought was interesting, and this kind of just jumps right into it, he decided to keep some of the homoerotic overtones of the relationship between Tyler Durden
I don't know how you could get rid of them.
And the narrator, which that's a fun fact about Chuck Palahniuk, is that he was married to a woman for quite a long time, but he came out as gay after they got divorced.
Yeah. He has a partner that he's been
he's with
for
a man for a while, but I think he was married to a woman for a while.
I don't know, because according to the information that I found, I don't know that he was ever actually married to a woman, but he just said he had a wife because he wasn't.
Okay.
Or he mentioned a partner and people assumed it was a wife.
Maybe I misread that, or I thought I saw that he had a wife. I thought he was. Anyway, it doesn't matter. He wanted to keep David Fincher wanted to keep the homoerotic overtones because it makes the audience uncomfortable at the time, at least, especially in 1999. Right, still not everybody wasn't quite so #woke. And it also helped keep them from anticipating the twist ending because they were sort of on edge and uncomfortable. And now thinking back on the movie, there isn't that it's there, but it's not there's a couple handful of moments that stick out in my head where I'm like, oh, I guess I get it. But like, I don't think when I saw it the first time when I was, like in college or whatever, that even...
Well, don't spoil it for me.
I'm not spoiling anything. I just don't think that was a thing that came across to me.
Okay.
Like the homoerotic.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how they do some of that stuff.
It is there, and like when I think about it, I'm like, oh yeah, I can see it, but like I don't think with the first time without really thinking about it, I don't think I noticed it. Maybe I saw this movie. I think I've seen this movie once, and it was like freshman year of college, so like 10 years ago or something like that. But it's been a long time, so yeah, Well, it'll be interesting. We'll see. So after they shot and edited the film, the studio execs hated it, and they restructured the marketing for it to try to reduce losses because they were like, this is not going to make any money, which it actually ended up not making any money or being
I saw
a moderate
that
failure. It didn't meet expectations, and like the reaction from critics was really mixed because it was named like one of the most controversial films of all time, and it's like in 1999 it was like the most controversial movie of the year. Like some critics loved it, some critics hated it. Fans, audiences kind of like were super mixed on it. It's basically like The Last Jedi. It's basically
hot take.
Fight Club is The Last Jedi.
I haven't seen the movie yet, but having read the book, I can imagine that it would inspire a lot of different feelings in different people.
Yeah. It's an interesting movie. An interesting movie. Lots of people, you can like it. You can like it at different stages of your life for different reasons. Yeah. Different people can like it for very different reasons that are completely like polar opposite to each other. Like you can be seen as a scathing indictment of toxic masculinity, while at the same time those same bros can love it for the broiness of it.
That's one thing that did stick out to me, the whole toxic masculinity thing. It's an indictment of it and also like a love letter to it
at the same time. And that's the thing. You can and people can be on both sides of that and love it for both reasons. It's very interesting. It's a really interesting movie. So originally producers, when they were started, I think Sony, I can't remember who was making this. Not Sony. I don't know, it's in here somewhere. They arranged actors to read the initial a read-through of the script to determine how long it was going to be. So they did a read-through. The first read-throughs were 6 hours long. Jesus. Initial reading lasted 6 hours, so they had to cut back a little bit, which Fincher's notoriously verbose in his filmmaking, which we'll get to a little bit more here in a second. So originally Peter Jackson was considered to direct this movie, which would have been really interesting. Yeah. Because I don't think he has I love Peter Jackson. He's one of my favorite directors. Yeah, but I don't think he has the edge for a film.
Yeah. He's like the avant-garde-ness.
Well, because he started his original career, he was an original career. Like before Lord of the Rings, he was like a wacky B movie schlocky horror guy kind of. Like he did wacky irreverent horror comedy. He did The Frighteners, which is why he didn't do this movie. And he had another one, I can't remember what it's called. It was super over the top, silly B movies that are pretty well regarded as schlocky but fun and good and well made. So that was kind of his whole purview before this. I had forgotten that Peter Jackson also directed Heavenly Creatures, which actually makes a lot of sense and is probably the best translation to Fight Club. If you don't know, Heavenly Creatures is about a true life story of two young girls who ended up killing one of the girls' mothers. It's kind of a dark, twisted, psychological type thing. So that kind of actually would work. I just forgot he had done that. He also did a lot of, like I said, schlocky B films. Like Dead Alive, Meet the Feebles, Bad Taste, The Frighteners to some extent. So I guess I didn't look up what David Fincher did before this. 7 would have been after this, I think. No, 7 was before this.
Okay.
So that makes sense. And Alien 3. So Fincher, he probably done other stuff, but Fincher did Alien 3 in 92, which is notoriously not a very good movie. But he did 7 in 95, and this was 99.
Okay.
So I can say 7 is a pretty solid That makes sense. If you're looking for somebody to do Fight Club, getting the guy who did Seven makes sense.
I've never seen it, but I know the premise.
It's a very twisted, dark murder mystery thriller.
Yeah, so that makes sense.
Also starring Kevin Spacey. But yeah, so it makes sense. Like, it's real dark. It's real, but from what I understand and I don't think I've ever even seen any of Peter Jackson's early films. But it just doesn't seem to make sense to me. So, anyways, they didn't get him because he did The Frighteners.
Right.
So.
Oh, it would have been a different movie.
Yeah, it would have been very different. So producer, this is fun. Ross Bell, one of the producers, he met with Russell Crowe, was originally slated to play Tyler Durden.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, to discuss his candidacy or discuss whether or not he would play Tyler Durden. So yeah, Russell Crowe.
Okay.
Another producer on the project met with Pitt and wanted Pitt to play the role. And ultimately the studio went with the senior producer who said, we should go with Brad Pitt. And the other producer wanted Russell Crowe, and they're like, we'll go with, you've been doing it longer, you pick. And he picked Brad Pitt. So I could see Russell Crowe working, but not as good as Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
He's just not as good of an actor as Brad Pitt is, and it's a very distinct role.
Brad Pitt at that time, he's so bro-y.
Yeah. He is. That's the thing. Well, Russell Crowe's pretty fucking bro-y, too. He can be. He really can. I mean, he was kind of branched out more into... But, at the time, Brad Pitt was... but Brad Pitt was also kind of like a super, serious actor. Whereas Russell Crowe... Yeah, he had moments with, Master and Commander and other stuff. And I don't know. It would have been interesting. It would have been a very different movie.
Yeah.
The Fight Club, directed by Peter Jackson, starring Russell Crowe, would have been a very different film than we got. So for the narrator, they wanted, and I'm trying not to spoil anything here, they wanted a sexy marquee name. So they originally looked at Matt Damon.
Okay.
And Sean Penn. Which, Matt Damon and Russell Crowe, that's... boy, oh boy. I want to see that. Alternate universe. I want to see that. Peter Jackson directs Fight Club starring Russell Crowe and Matt Damon. That's
somewhere in a different timeline.
That would be wild. That's what, if you're going to do a remake Fight Club, go back and do that. Get Peter Jackson to direct it. Get Matt Damon and Russell Crowe as the two main characters. That would be fascinating. I want to see that. Oh, that would be awesome. So they, Pitt and Edward Norton, eventually, who they cast. They did a shit ton of training in, boxing and taekwondo and stuff for the movie. Oh, and soap making. Because that's a very important part of the film. Brad Pitt, motherfucker commits, went to the dentist and had them chip his teeth up. Because he didn't want perfect teeth. So they, chiseled his teeth away.
I've chipped a tooth.
My front tooth is chipped from... Yeah. It's the worst thing in the world.
It's
the worst feeling in the entire world. It's the worst. I vividly remember it to this day. I was eating an Emos salad, and I bit down on my fork, and I moved my fork weird, and it went... Oh,
you're making a shudder go up my spine.
When it happened, I went... oh, God. And it's a tiny little chip. You can barely even see it, but that was the worst thing in the world. Anyways, he went to the dentist and they fucked his teeth up, so he looked a little more... Off kilter, and then they fixed it after the movie. So this is really interesting to me. Fincher's first choice for Marla Singer, which I assume is a character in the book also, was Janine Garofalo, which you might best know her from. She's been in lots... She's like a comedian, I think. But what we would best know her from, and what we've seen her in most recently, is she's in Wet Hot American Summer. And all of those TV shows, she's the main camp counselor lady. Oh. That's Janine. She was in other stuff in the 90s. She was his first choice, but she wouldn't do it because of the sex. She objected to the sexual content in the film, and she wouldn't do it. Oh, these two both make perfect sense to me, though. The other two people they considered, Courtney Love and Winona Ryder. Oh, yeah.
both
would have been really good.
Sense. I mean, Helena Bonham Carter makes perfect sense, too.
Yeah, no, she's great, and she's amazing in the role. And then this one makes very little sense to me. And Fincher vetoed it because she was too young at the time, but the studio wanted Reese Witherspoon.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, for our alternate universe version, I think... What we do is have all of those actresses in every scene. It's a different actress.
This is Hollywood. Come come on, this will be gangbusters. I mean, it'll cost a fortune because it's all huge movie makers and stars. But this, okay, Peter Jackson directs Fight Club, starring Russell Crowe as Tyler Durden, Matt Damon as the narrator, and then Janine Garofalo, Courtney Love, Winona Ryder, and Reese Witherspoon as Marla Singer.
Yeah, they just rotate.
They just rotate through. And it actually works.
It does.
Oh, I love this. They need to make this movie. The original version didn't have the voiceover. So there's a spoiler. There's a voiceover.
Well, thanks.
Yeah. There's a that doesn't ruin anything. There's a voiceover.
I mean, technically, there's a voiceover in the book. So
yeah, but they didn't have it because it's considered hackney. And I've said this before on the podcast that it's generally voiceovers. You want to avoid them if you can because you should be able to tell your story visually. But for certain stories, it makes sense. This is one of those stories where it makes a lot of sense, and it adds a lot to the film. And I totally understand. Yeah, David Fincher, when he signed on, was like, no, we need the voiceover. And a lot of the humor does come from Edward Norton's voiceover. So, Polinick loves this movie.
Awesome.
He thinks it's a great, faithful adaptation. He applauded how they streamlined his book, too. He thought they did a good job trimming the fat from his.
I'll be on the lookout for
that.
No,
he applauds it. He's a really good job. It's very faithful, but it also trims where it needs to, and it's a good.
So very different from our last one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, he's very happy, or supposed. Whatever article I was reading about it, at the time he liked it at least. The writers considered removing the plot twist from. They considered removing it because they thought like it would be too weird or audiences wouldn't like it or get it or whatever.
That kind of makes it like a really different story.
It makes it useless. Like it's a nothing. Like I don't even understand how you could remove the plot. Like I would be really interested.
If you remove that, it's just like
I don't want to spoil in case you have, and in case you have anybody who plans on watching it before we do, which I would recommend. Fight Club's a great movie. It's intense, but it's really good. There's a huge twist. That doesn't spoil anything. Everybody knows that. Yeah. But go in cold and watch it. It's a fascinating experience. But they considered removing that twist. And again, I would want to see that script. Like, how would that even work? Like, what's the point?
Yeah, that's my thing. That if you remove the twist, there's no point.
Yeah, I know. I thought the same thing. But David Fincher was like, no, we got to leave the twist in. And his quote was, considering audiences, they said they wouldn't believe the plot twist is what studio execs thought. And Fincher said, if they accept everything up to this point, they'll accept the plot twist. If they're still in the theater, they'll stay with it.
Fair enough.
Yeah. A couple more, and then we'll wrap this up. The makeup artist, Julie Pierce, she studied a bunch of boxing and mixed martial arts fights in order to get all the bruising and.
Oh yeah, I can imagine the makeup for this was intense.
Probably was nominated. I don't know. I didn't look that up, but it might have been. So they filmed for 140 days, and again, now this is where Fincher is a notoriously laborious in his shooting and an overshooter. And this is the thing. He shot 1,500 rolls of film, which is 3 times what you would normally shoot for a film.
Well, you know what? It's better to have too much than to have not enough.
Fincher always does this. He shoots a lot. He shoots a shit ton of takes of everything. Kyle, my friend from Good, Bad, or Bad Bad, was an extra in Gone Girl because they filmed in our town. And he's talked about this before that. He's in a scene, and he's in one scene in the background. He's running up a hill carrying a camera in a very climactic moment of the film. And he said they shot that like 50 times or something, like an insane amount of times. And in the particular take, you can see he is sweating his fucking ass off, like just drenched in sweat. It's because he ran up that hill 50 times or something, in an hour.
That was when he had long hair.
Yeah, he had long hair. I think they were shooting in like the summer, although it was supposed to be like the winter, but they were shooting.
Yeah, because they brought in fake snow. Didn't they?
We can get into this under the Gone Girl podcast. When I lived downtown, and it was like living in Hollywood. I used to go running downtown, and I went running, and they had the whole hill downtown covered with fake snow, and I was running, and a PA stopped me. I had my headphones, and he stopped me, and I pulled my headphones out. He goes, "They're in the middle of a scene. Hold on." And he's got his little walkie there, and he's like, and they're like, all right, we're clear. And he's like, all right, go ahead. And then I got to run through the background of the shot or whatever. But yeah, anyways, we'll get to that when we talk about Gone Girl, but it's interesting. All right, finally, a bunch of fight clubs popped up after this movie came out. This actually had a huge cultural impact in, like, not a great way, this movie. Like, well, the fight clubs is one thing, like, that's whatever. Like, a bunch of them were, like, you know, preppy, like, not even preppy, the most famous one I remember seeing a news story about was one in like Menlo Park in California, like the tech district. Yeah. Or not Menlo, whatever. In the tech district in California, Silicon Valley, they had one where it was a bunch of like nerds beating each other up for, you know, because they saw Fight Club.
Bunch of nerds.
Yeah, exactly. But there was also like a bunch of other stuff with like sort of like the more like terrorist-y elements.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That like people like bombing stuff and like.
Well, shoot, I know how to make mustard gas now because I read the book.
Yeah, there's a very lengthy part on the Wikipedia article that's like cultural impact, and a lot of it's like this guy got arrested for making a bomb. This like so that's a whole thing you can look up. Finally. And this is hilarious to me. It's kind of what we were talking about earlier. In 2003, Fight Club was listed as one of the 50 best guy movies of all time by Men's Journal. And that's what I mean. It's like, because it could also be listed as like one of the 50 best, like, indictments of men of all time by like, you know, some other
well, it's
editorial.
A complicated issue.
Oh, it's a very complicated film. It's interesting. I'm really excited to watch it again because it's been a long time, but I'm also excited for you to see it, and then I'm really excited to talk
too.
about
it. After reading the book, I'm really excited to see how it translates to film.
It works really well, I think. I haven't read the book, but it feels like it works well. It's a really interesting, it's a really good movie. I have problems with parts of it in terms of like how I feel about some of the things, sort of the message at certain times. Yeah. But at the same, we'll get into it. Go watch Fight Club. Go find it. It's probably on Amazon for a couple bucks or something like that. Because we're going to be reviewing it exactly a week from now. Yeah. Breaking down Fight Club.
You know, it's not a long book.
Oh, yeah, you can go read it.
It's around 200 pages.
Wow, that's really nice.
You know, 200 pages, give or take a little bit. It's not an easy read.
Yeah, like you said, it was like reading a fever dream. So.
It was like reading a fever dream. Someone else's fever dream, not even my fever dream. Yeah. It's not an easy read, but it's fast paced. Yeah. So if you can plow through it, you know, if the subject matter doesn't bother you to the point where like you can't pick it back up once you've put it down, it's a pretty quick read.
Interesting. I might check it out. It's something I'd be interested to read, actually. Yeah. Just for the...
I think you should.
Just for the, like... I don't know. Because Pollock's such an interesting author. I think
he is an interesting author, and it's kind of like a cultural landstone.
It is a cultural touchstone. Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I think I will read it. Although I have like fucking 4 books stacked up on my finishing a Star Wars book. I'm about to start Ready Player One for our episode, and then I just got Artemis for Christmas for me, which I got to read because I love.
It's at our public library, for some reason shelved as sci-fi.
And now after reading it, you're still not sure?
And now after reading it, I have no idea why it's shelved as sci-fi.
I was trying to, you remember when you said that it was shelved as sci-fi, I didn't want to say anything because it's like, there's a twist, but the twist isn't a sci-fi.
No, it's not a sci-fi twist.
Not really. So, all right, I'm not sure why they shelved it as sci-fi, but
I want to talk about that more in the actual episode.
But I could see it. We'll talk about it. Yeah. We'll get there. I don't want to spoil anything in case you haven't watched it or read it yet. You probably have, but if you haven't, or if you haven't, you're probably not planning to, but who cares?
But you know, read it, watch it.
Yes, and then come back in a week because we're talking about Fight Club. We're going to start Fight Club with the cats. They have their own Fight Club already, actually. They just beat the shit out of each other.
Grindy thinks he has a Fight Club with Albus.
And Albus doesn't realize that he's...
And Albus is like, I don't want to fight you.
I don't want to be in your Fight Club.
But then, every so often, Grindy will take it too far, and Albus will turn around and just kick him in the jaw. Yep. And Grindy will look up at me just, like, so hurt and offended.
Grindy is Tyler Durden. Albus is Meatloaf. Which, if you haven't seen the movie, that doesn't really make any sense. But you'll see when we get there. Meatloaf, the singer, is in the film.
I knew that.
Okay, yeah. We're done. See you guys next week on This Film Is Lit. In the meantime, keep reading books, keep watching movies. go check out some of the things from our best of 2017 list. Give you some ideas. Go read them. Go watch them. Bye.